Hey guys, and welcome to Sozo Creations. So it has begun phase 2 of this bizarre Minecraft map building channel. Throughout this new phase, we will be continuing many of the series initiated in the phase prior, as well as beginning new projects that will expand the world of Altar even further. One such project being the Alheim expansion. Beginning with the district of Vulgary, Alheim is the earliest landmark location built in Altar. Therefore, it isn't an over-exaggeration to claim that I have spent over 5 years building this massive city. Which is a problem because despite the amount of time I've invested in this single location, I am nowhere close to finishing this project. So here I am crafting a series that would make it mandatory for me to finish Alheim. This is how this series will work. I've done the calculations and I've decided that there will be a total of 31 districts comprising the city of Alheim. Throughout the course of this series, I'll be using a roulette to spin out a district I'll have to work on for the video. Now, I'd like to make it clear that none of the current districts are labeled as finished. Even if they seem like they're filled with content, there are so many more improvements I would like to make in these areas. The goal for this series is to get Alheim as close to completion as possible. So far, I'm thinking of uploading an episode every 3 building videos, so I don't know how long that's going to take, but yeah, that is basically what I've planned for the Alheim expansion. So without further ado, let's get on with spinning this roulette. Okay, let's see what this roulette will give us. Oh, crust. Oh, cool. So it looks like the first district we'll be working on is Oakrust, a nice and peaceful district that used to have a dense population of elderly folks. However, in recent years there has been an increase in younger residents as a new casino is built in the district next door. Oakrust is probably best known for its old cemetery and its historical mega wall. This district is really a blend of the old wind with the new breeze. As always, a little geomorphing was needed to boot up this project. I really like the idea of a town divided by levels with an old cemetery built on the very top. The hilly landscape of this district really reminded me of my grandparents' town back in Japan, therefore a lot of my builds in this video may resemble Japanese rural areas. For example, the staircase going up the hill. While walking up a long flight of stairs could definitely be tiring, I feel like there's also a sense of excitement towards the expectations we have when reaching the top. What type of scenery is there? I don't know if other people who've been to Japan could relate, but strangely I encounter a lot of these moments in Japan. So I tried depicting that excitement in these stairs as well. Underneath the stairs is an old entrance to Alheim's sewage system that may be explored in a future video. So the houses are definitely much more Western. Although there are buildings in Japan that does take the Western image of a house and transform it into something more cute, for lack of a better word, almost like the Western houses portrayed in Ghibli films. So again, inspiration might be coming from those buildings in Japan as well. I really like buildings constructed on the side of walls, so I incorporated that to the wall facing the river. I also added more sewage inlets underneath the stone brick dock. Similar to the buildings in Alheim Harbor, I tried exploring new shapes for the houses and focused on making each of the houses different. This area in particular is where the young are beginning to populate, and just adjacent to these buildings is the new party district of Alheim. Now, if there's one emphasis I put on Oakrust, it is trees. The amount of trees here is what differentiates this district from the rest of the city. and it really garnishes this area with a relaxed and peaceful mood. I also began building parts of the white wall that will stretch into the district behind. So before we finish this build, let's go back and reinitiate a small section I've always included in my past videos called Sudden Fun Facts? Yeah! Since I'll be building a cemetery later on in this video, let's talk about cemeteries and the quite surprising history they possess. Now, burying the dead has been practiced by humans for thousands of years, so in a way the concept of a cemetery has been around since prehistoric times. However, the word cemetery wasn't used until the 2nd century when Roman catacombs emerged underground. Not like naturally emerged, like they emerged in the sense that they were built. The word cemetery comes from the Latin word, and forgive me if I butcher this, coimaterion. I don't know how I ever made this transition. I guess somebody was like, what to call this place? Coimaterion. I think this place should be called a cemetery. Regardless of how different they may sound, coimaterion means sleeping place in Latin, which really fits what cemeteries are. However, it isn't until the 7th century when we begin to see something that resembles the iconic image of Western cemeteries. During this time in Europe, only the church was allowed to bury the dead, thus burials were strictly controlled by the church and were located just outside the church as well. Something that was practiced then and maybe even now is the hierarchical system implemented in churchyards. The people of higher influence would be buried on the east side where the sun would rise, marking the beginning of the day, and the next group of people will be buried on the south side of the church, with the north being the lowest tier. However, as the population in Europe began to grow, churchyards began to be packed. And by packed, packed. Some were buried on top of others. It was a whole mess. This made the cemetery a very unsanitary place, being a reservoir for all sorts of diseases. Therefore, by the end of the 18th century, garden cemeteries run by the government and private companies became the new trend. Garden cemeteries refer to the cemeteries located a few miles outside of town, covering a large amount of space with a garden-like aesthetic. Also very visually pleasing. However, as many might guess from looking at these photos, maintenance for garden cemeteries is very difficult, and keeping it maintained is also very pricey too. Therefore, lawn cemeteries were introduced in the mid-19th century to create a cemetery that is easier to maintain and to afford. However, they also faced a problem as people began to leave objects next to the graves, such as flowers, in which made it difficult to keep the place clean. So yeah, basically we have a lot of options to how we could have our bodies treated after death. This is also perhaps a good time to distinguish the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard. Usually the two words are interchangeable, however, if you want to be very technical, you could say that cemeteries usually refer to a wide range of burial grounds, whereas graveyards usually refer to the burial spaces right outside the church. And that was my rather long crash course on cemeteries. Before we progress into the finishing stages of Oakrust, I'd like to recommend you all this article from The Atlantic that interviews a professor from the University of Missouri. He talks a lot of cool ideas and facts about cemeteries, and they're really interesting. I think the one I liked the most was the idea that garden cemeteries functioned as a type of city for the dead, like a necropolis almost, which is why the entrances to these cemeteries are so grand and heavily ornamented. It's a nice read, I recommend it if you have the time. You could check it through the description below. Before completing the cemetery, the old wall was first made. I wanted it to look really old but also have indicators that signify that it has been upgraded throughout the years, such as the yellow and black emergency stripes. While Alheim doesn't face much danger of being attacked anymore, most of the walls today are still being used as government facilities. However, this particular wall serves more as a monument to the countless wars Alheim faced throughout its history. And finally, the cemetery. I'd say the format of the landscape is inspired by those of Japanese cemeteries, however the graves themselves resemble that of Western graves. I thought of making the gravestone look fancy, but I began to like the simple polished diorite look the graves had when I first built them as position indicators, so I left them as they were. And lastly, I began building a little of the main wall, which would eventually grow to encompass Alheim. And that's it for District 23, guys. A lot unpacked in this single district. So without stretching this video any further, let's move on to the cinematic. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Next video will be an Alter's Arcade video in which Martina and I pulled a little experiment onto our good friend Ryan. It's really funny, so do look forward to that. So that's pretty much it. Thank you again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!
I want you to stay. I want you to stay.